Okay. This presentation is entitled Building Human Capital Through Education. And it's a collaborative effort, interdisciplinary and intercontinental. This involves a collaboration between Keisha Mitchell, sincerely me. So the abstract you have printed, but we'll read through it again. Educational resilience is the heightened likelihood of success in school and other life accomplishments despite environmental adversities brought about by early traits, conditions, and experiences. Using the social affirmation framework, which we discussed earlier, and Ericksonian development theory, which many of us are familiar with, a stage there of development, this article explores education in the Caribbean. So it's an exploratory article. This paper attempts to answer 4 questions. What is social affirmation? What is the relationship between psychosocial development and educational resilience? What is underperformance in the Caribbean? What is underperformance in Caribbean education as the problem that we're addressing? And how can social affirmation explain the educational resilience demonstrated in high-performing students? So why would we look at education as a topic, or even early education as a topic as a conference related to human resource development? Primarily because education is a microcosm. The school system is a microcosm of the work environment. So our adult life going to work mirrors the child or the student's life going to school. So let's consider this quote in terms of education and Caribbean HRD. The proliferation of complex organizations has made most human activities collective endeavors. We grow up in and start families. We work in and rely on organizations for goods and services. We learn in schools and universities. We play sports in teams. We join clubs and associations. Many of us will grow old and die in hospitals or nursing homes. We build these human enterprises because of what they can do for us. They produce consumer goods, offer entertainment, provide social services and healthcare, and deliver the mail. So again, the education system in the Caribbean is a microcosm or an incubator for the work environment and the labor force that we see today and the one that will produce tomorrow. We've already looked at the social affirmation framework, but quickly for those who weren't here and if you don't remember what it is, this is an updated, more sleek model, but the collective identity, don't forget, think of it as the school. You know, we have school rivalry in Jamaica. Everybody's associated with a school. We see it at Champs. But in HRD, you can think of it as your organization. What is your organization known for and what does it represent? Under that, on the collective side as the group, the organizational level, feelings about the organization. Therefore, feelings about your school. From the collective identity or the organization, you take on a personal identity. Those identities are given to you as a palette or just like going to the buffet line. Here are the identities you can select from. Therefore, in school, you are my student, you are my teacher, you are my principal, I'm the chairman of the board, I'm the head of the foundation, whatever it is. Think of it in that light. And then under that, anchoring everything are the feelings, personal self-esteem that relate to the identities that you have or the scripts, the roles that you're given to play. Okay? So that's where we're going. And the social affirmation process then to affirm is to assert value. So the roles that we take on allow us to determine whether or not we keep them based on the value that's given to them in the society around us, or in your organization, how much power do you have? Looking at Ericksonian Development, Ericksonian Development, for those of you who are aware, it's an 8-stage developmental model. It describes the psychosocial processes that individuals have to solve in 8 stages from birth to death. When we come into the world, we have to first decide or reconcile by the way that we're treated if we're going to trust the world to be friendly towards us and meet our needs, feed us, change our wet diaper or dirty, filled whatever, or are we going to have to cry ourselves to sleep, soothe ourselves by sucking our thumbs until that pain disappears and we can somehow later on resolve that issue for ourselves? Can we trust or mistrust the world all the way to the end of life where you're dying and solving the problem of integrity versus despair? Have I lived according to my beliefs and my values? Or have I committed so many sins that I have so much regret that I'm in despair that I don't have enough time to resolve those problems? So education, when we begin to apply Ericksonian developmental theory to the issue of education, we understand that there are 2 primary stages in Ericksonian development where education takes place. Education first begins informally at home, from parent to child, or caregiver to child. Vocabulary, language acquisition occurs rapidly from ages 2 to 7. In that stage, it's the initiative versus guilt stage. If you see a toddler running around and they're trying stuff and exploring the world, either they'll pick up something or they'll do something, mimic a parent's action and say the same word, and you go, yay, wonderful, praise. They will learn to try the action again and again and again to repeat that experience of joy and praise. And they'll take it on, all on their own without being stimulated. That's the action you want them to take to the classroom and to learning. The same action you want them to, the same level of regard you want them to give to the teacher as the parent. If that correction at home is not done as in praise and cautiously correcting, and rather you have a toddler exploring, trying to say what the parent said, and picking up stuff, and the parent going, pick me, sit down! How much time I tell you to leave it? Or clap, you know what I mean? And the child gets scared and anxious. Am I going to be punished because I didn't hear the last time? And so they sit in a corner and they fear the parent out of punishment. Will they bring the same attitude to learning to the classroom? And so that's the process. Education begins at home in initiative versus guilt. Resolving that psychosocial conflict accurately or adaptively, positively and adaptively, will ensure that the student, when they go to the classroom, will also be willing to be instructed and will have a desire for learning. The second stage that education involves is the stage of industry versus inferiority, 8 to 11. At industry, you want a child to be able to identify a goal. Okay, mommy or daddy normally goes out and sweeps the step. I can do this today for them as one task. I will take the broom, I've seen them do it, and I will start sweeping the step. It's a goal I can accomplish. I'll take the stuff and put it in the pan, clean up after myself, and do this. Or I'll make my bed today. Industry, identify a goal, identify the steps to completing that goal, develop the competence, the dexterity, and the intelligence, and resolve it. That's the attitude you want them to take to learning in the classroom, to also develop dexterity and intelligence and competence. So the argument here in using Ericksonian development is that in social and emotional learning, the task of education, though it's focused on academic competence in this structure, sorry, go back one slide, I'm on the slide. I'm gonna skip some of the slides, which is why I spoke about things, right? So yeah, go back to the structure, just one slide. There you go. So generally in education, we focus on academics. But if you look at this diagram, at the top of the hierarchy is general self-esteem. It's how the child feels about him or herself. Therefore, it's how the student feels about him or herself that's going to determine how much they learn, how much they're willing to learn, and how much they're willing to learn from that teacher or that coach. Academic competence in terms of language arts, literacy, and mathematics, numeracy. And then other subjects, music, sports, all those other things, are going to come in later on. Social competence on the other side deals with how they interact with the teacher and how they interact with their peers and how they interact with their parents. If you have the ability to recognize help in your environment, you're more than likely willing to go out seeking help from that environment. Research has shown that students who actually perceive support in their teachers will persist on a frustrating task longer. They will actually be more willing to attempt more difficult tasks. They will have a higher sense of self-esteem and a higher degree of social competence because they're actually acquiring social skills in negotiating those relationships. So that's the essence behind Ericksonian development and the two stages of initiative versus guilt and initiative versus guilt and industry versus inferiority. You want the child to actually take the ability to, the curiosity for learning, and you want them to also develop competence and dexterity in the classroom. So the responses they have to the parent or the caregiver at home is the same response you want them to have to the teacher in the classroom, because they're going to transfer the parental authority to the teacher's authority in the classroom. Okay, so that figure, just to sum up there before moving on to the problem, the hierarchical structure of self-esteem, which we showed in, next slide, just to sum up. In the middle elementary school years, and so academic competence and social competence are two of the four major factors in general self-esteem or children in middle childhood. The other two factors are physical or athletic competence and physical appearance. Thank you. So we're skipping to slide number 10. Yeah, there we go. So here's a classroom exercise now where the children are in school and they're paying attention to the teacher, and phonics or reading is an exercise that's given in the classroom. And the teacher says, who wants to read today? And no hands go up, or one hand shoots up, me, 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 me. The reason for that is this can reading aloud and pronouncing words correctly can either be an esteem building, identity affirming exercise, or they can be a shame producing, identity negating experience. If the teacher corrects the pronunciation or the phonics carefully, then the student is more willing to take on learning or take on the identity of scholar more seriously than if the teacher shames or tapes the mouth of a child because they're too talkative or giving too much trouble. And in a case like that, they would rather not identify with the teacher and so negate the identity of scholar. In the Caribbean and in Jamaica, there's a challenge with the Creole influence vernacular. We call it patois here, but there are other forms of Creole which are not English-based. But the primary language of instruction and curriculum instruction across the region is English. And so for those who do not speak a clear form of English where phonetical pronunciation is done, then coming into the classroom environment and learning to associate correct pronunciation and spelling with figures, with pictures, and even with reading numbers is going to produce a challenge. And so this is why some of the research by Baker Henningham and others, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean School Reform Project, the Task Force on Educational Reform for us here, ESDP, whatever, all of those programs are beginning to recognize we need to pay attention to this phonics issue and how parents are teaching at home and fill the gaps Where the parents are not equipped or able to do it, then early childhood education programs are developed. Many of them in Jamaica are private sector funded. Only about 10% are run by the government. And so 3 to 5 year olds, much of that stimulation is coming from the private sector investment. And this is research that's been going on for some time now. So, as I said, for teacher support, next slide, teachers fill the gaps. Where parents are not equipped, teachers fill the gap in the classroom. And if students perceive that teachers are supportive, that's wanting the best for their students, willing to give them extra time, past papers, whatever it is that they need, bus fare, lunch money, you know that teachers will sacrifice for their students. If students perceive support in their teachers, they're more willing to commit to the task of education and to pursue and to achieve more. When students feel a sense of belonging also to the school, they're more likely to work to achieve personal success as well as protect the reputation of the school. And when industry predominates over inferiority, the ego learns that important tasks can be accomplished by using intelligence and dexterity. So what is our problem? I'm going to speed through these and you can get a sense of it, but it's quite topical. The problem of underperformance in Caribbean education has been touted in many places. And the reason for it is just some of these statistics I'll share in the next few slides. For example, in 2011, 69% of the 41,668 students who sat the first sitting of the grade 4 literacy test achieved mastery, while the results of 21% were classified as almost mastery and the remaining 10% were classified as non-mastery. More recently, nearly 40% of 42,000 students who sat the grade 6 achievement test in 2013 performed below standard. In the next slide, when you're looking at all age schools, most children across the region complete primary education, have some secondary education up to grade 9, completing the grade 9 achievement test. However, after leaving grade 9, they either leave school ill-equipped for work, meaning the school system has not trained them to be able to either be instructed in work or be ready for work or having the skills that will actually get them a job. And so they drop out of the formal education system. Research conducted by Miller in 22 countries of the region at the primary level supports the persistent underperformance of students on standardized tests. And this persistence has been documented recently by Williams, Watson, and Fox. Here is a graphical representation in the next slide at the CXC level. What you're beginning to see is a trend that the issues at the primary level continue to move up the system in the secondary and the tertiary levels of the education system. So there is no shocking surprise when you get to the top of the system and you see it. It's actually already occurring in the underperformance or the low scores produced by Caribbean students on standardized tests. Here are 3 critical subjects that you need in order to get into any other educational institution or tertiary level, or even to get a job: English and math. Math is the red line. This is from years 2007 to 2013. So 7 years of data here. Math is the red line. The average ranges in the 30s to about the 40s. Doesn't pass the 50% line. And that's because we have a cultural problem towards math. English is the blue line. The lowest is in the 50s, and it gets about to an average high of 70. Doesn't pass that. In terms of IT, technology use, I've changed several devices just to do these presentations. Social media, Twitter, everything, this whole room is set up with technology. Our kids are excelling at technology. The lowest here is in the 70s and going up to almost 90 in average. However, they're still leaving school ill-equipped for work. I'll skip the next slide. So you're beginning to see the challenge, what we're calling the underperformance in the education system. And it's not that we're trying to make every student an academic scholar, but we want students to have a, wow, I'm out of time. And I can't even, can I have 2 minutes? Okay. So I'm jumping to, as I said, the math program then. We have developed here are some of the characteristics of educationally resilient students. Socially competent, problem-solving people, autonomous, have a sense of purpose. Professor Keys shared that last night. Motivated, goal-oriented, use time positively. High-achieving students are also more likely to attend schools that are of higher socioeconomic status. They're Catholic, more curriculum exposure, higher student commitment, read more pages per week, did more homework, had higher grades than low-achieving students. Some of the characteristics of educationally resilient students. So if you don't go to these high-performing schools, if your teachers and if you don't have all of the assets that other people have, can you actually develop them? And the answer is yes, because there are some innovative strategies that have actually been implemented. One is Jamaica's National Math Program that's actually identified about 126 of the weakest primary schools and about 26 of the weakest secondary schools in math. And they have actually deployed math coaches all around the country to these low-performing schools since September of last year. The program is not yet a year old, so they haven't yet evaluated it. However, the math coaches are not teaching math, but they're actually changing the culture towards mathematics in the schools. Developing a math plan for the school for about 5 years, assisting the school-based math teacher, because many of our math teachers are not qualified to teach math. And so they're assisting the school-based math teacher to become competent in teaching math. They're also identifying the weaknesses and doing training as necessary. That's a national math program. Music, perfect pitch for a sound education. This is a public-private partnership between First Global Bank and the Ministry of Education, introduced music into the curriculum, required all grade 3 students in 6 primary schools to learn music alongside their academic subjects. The results were astonishing. Students improved at least 2 grade levels in reading just by learning to play an instrument. And they actually, because they felt confident, one child said, I felt like a burst. It was so easy, all right. And then and they were more respectful, attended school more, all of that stuff. So the social skills were also building. I'm definitely out of time. And then the School of Champions, Jamaica College Transformation Program, took a corporate strategy to running the school, implemented a performance management system for students and teachers, ran a success program for the most the 30 most delinquent students, taking them out of the school population when the principal was first arrived. And it's a very expensive program though, and transformed the entire culture of the school by first identifying new values, incorporating that, and on and on and on and on. So it's a very expensive process, but we can close with a final thought. Okay. There's here. The Caribbean workforce of tomorrow must engage in lifelong education and have the capacity to quickly assimilate new information and techniques, take more autonomous decisions, and perform more non-routine and complex tasks with less supervision. And the elements of the education agenda articulated today must fully support this process and as well respond to the changes implied by it. Thank you very much.